evening and welcome to the Brothas-in-law. I know this is not our usual day to put out a video, but an interesting video had came out or just posted out, I think, a couple of days ago, and Mike had sent it to me, and we talked about it after our show on Thursday, and it was like, okay, hey, let's get ahead of this story before it really gets out there in the public eye. And this one has to do with the director of the Black Panthers movie, Ryan. Shucks, I didn't forgot his last name.
Coogler.
Coogler. That's what it is.
There you go.
And so an incident he was involved in that took place back at the beginning of this year, back in January. So we thought we'd go ahead and get out in front of this story and break it down and see what went right and what went wrong in this. But before we get into that, we just thank all of y'all for joining us tonight. Go, Tone. We're going to answer your question too, Tone, before we start. Stacy, welcome everyone to the show. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button for us. Hit that share button. And if you're new to our channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well. So before we get into tonight's topic, let me say this. If you remember last year, Mike and I did the video on the police officer who shot the young lady in Columbus, Ohio, for getting ready to stab another young lady. Well, that officer is not being brought up on charges in that shooting. So we just thought we'd put that out there. And plus, if you heard or have any new information about the New Year's Eve shooting back in Canton, Ohio, please let us know. We like to stay on top of that. Mike and I like to do a updated video on that. I've been looking. I haven't seen anything. But if you have and you're back in Canton, Ohio, please let us know. We like to stay on top of that story as well. So to Tone's question, he's asking us, how do we feel about the media pulling cops / live PD off the air? I never saw anything racist or mishandling going on that show. Yeah, Tone, I was kind of shocked that they did it. I think it was just, in my humble opinion, I think it was just a knee-jerk reaction to everything that was going on at that time period. Go ahead.
I agree. My thoughts on that is they pulled the show. Again, that's a prime example of what I was saying before about, the police being demonized. And just as a whole, that's an example of that right there. It pulled a show which was very informative and let people know what actually goes on the street with patrol officers and how most officers are handling calls for service and in confrontations and physical altercations. It was more educational than anything, I thought.
Yeah.
But they pulled that off because police as a whole, not just bad cops, but police as a whole, the majority of police were demonized, and I think that they must have thought that they would lose viewers or something and lose business or something. So they just took the whole thing off. I understand they brought it back on on a Fox or something like that channel.
Yeah, it's you have to get their app or something other that you can watch them, but it's not back on regular cable news or TV channels. So but yeah, good question, Tom. We like that. Thank you. If you got a question you'd like for us to answer on the show, go ahead and put it in the comments below. So tonight's topic: the director of Black Panthers was arrested in the bank. The teller called the police on him, and so the question is: was this another Karen acting up and called the police on another black man just trying to make a withdrawal from his bank account? Well, let's get into it, Mike.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that it took this long to come out. When I first saw it, I didn't realize it happened a couple months ago. Yeah, so I'm a little surprised that it took that long to come out into mainstream media.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good idea to talk about it because it's probably going to blow up. It's even more than it is right now.
Yeah. What's up,
Uh,
Frank?
and
Yeah.
it's interesting because I had heard that Mr. Kugler accepted the bank's apology pretty much and decided not to pursue anything. I don't know how truthful that is or how factual that is, but
Well,
it's interesting how he chose not to pursue anything with it, if that is in fact the case.
yeah, we'll get into it because I had just read an article where it says that he was asking for the police officers badges in this incident. So we'll break that on down. The video is about 3.5 minutes long. Like normal, we'll go ahead and let it play out so you can see what took place, and then we'll break it down and let you know the officer's actions were what a reasonable officer would do in this type of situation. Was it handled in a professional manner? Who jumped the gun? And we'll break all that down after we finish the video. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Hey, sir. Man, if you man. On this way. Oh, yeah, man, in back. No, back. Got it. Got it. Is there any reason y'all doing this, bro? Give me 1 second. Hold on. Fellas, I really should do it. I mean, what's going on, my man? Trying to put money on my own. You said what? Yeah, this your phone? Yeah, sure.
Baby nurse, y'all have her detained right now? What? The baby nurse, you know, one of those in the back seat, y'all have her detained right now?
Yes, she's near the 10 at this point.
All right. Can you, the doctors explain what's going on when we're out here?
Not really, man.
All right, so we got a call basically.
I heard somebody asking if I passed the note.
Yeah. So basically, we got a call, and from what we got the call, it seems like someone was trying to rob the bank. Something about you passing a note to the teller, something to that effect. Can you just tell me what's going on? Or?
Yeah, bro. It's a medical assistant that works on my house that prefers me pay in cash. Every time I make a withdrawal to pay her, you know, because it's a large amount, she works a lot.
Yeah.
You know, if I don't write down on the note how much I went out, and then I don't want it ran through the money counter right there at the desk, the whole bank ends up looking at it. They just ran money going to the money into the account. And I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe getting money out like that. So every time I go to withdraw it, you know, I put the amount, the account I want to take it out of, and I put my own card in, and then they usually take me out like, oh, it's just get the money from me. You know what I'm saying?
The teller, she started to freak out. So she didn't even match that account with his ID that she gave. So I need to double check to see if that's even the account, his account. See what I'm saying? Because if that is his account, what is he doing that for? You know what I'm saying?
I stated to the officers that arrested me that had that Glocks out.
Yeah.
That I was putting money on my own account.
I understand.
I put my own bank card in there before the lady went in the back. You know what I'm saying?
So we have to confirm that. You gotta understand. We don't come out because of the seriousness of the call. We don't just come out, and unfortunately, in a situation like that, you don't get the benefit of the doubt. We detain, and then we ask questions later. That's exactly what I went inside for. Basically, we got a call from, I believe, the teller saying that someone slipped a note. Basically made it appear as if the bank was being robbed by somebody. They gave a description and things like that. That's why we came out and we detained everybody, and I explained to him. Unfortunately, in those situations, we take an abundance of caution because we don't know what's going on. That's why you were detained. Once we figured out that they called, and she's saying that I guess he wasn't speaking and that's and passed their note, and that's why she was nervous and stalling.
She had a black.
I had no idea. I didn't talk to her.
And that's it.
All right, very, very interesting. So the call for service was what those officers were acting on. So the question is, who, like you said, Corey, earlier, who jumped the gun here? Who prematurely got scared and thought somebody was robbing a bank? Now we can get into, is it normal for somebody to write a note on the back of a deposit slip, something
Let
like
me
that?
let me just read the note and kind of put it into a little more context and a little more perspective here why she might have jumped the gun on this. So note said, I would like to withdraw $12,000 cash from my checking account. Please do the count somewhere else. I'd like to be discreet. So now kind of put yourself in that teller's spot. Now, I also understood too, reading another article, different article, where uh, the movie director Kugli said that he does this all the time, and that few people in the bank have said that he comes in there all the time. Now, could this have been just been a new teller? Another thing, along
And
with
does
that,
he do it this same way all the time?
right? According to him, yes.
Okay.
Now, also too, it says that when she went to go run, I guess, his information to see what count of she got an alert came up, and that's when she contacted her manager, and then they contacted the police.
Now, what is this alert? That would be my question. They say an alert came up.
I
I wonder
I
what
don't
the
know. I
alert
mean,
is and why did they have an alert on his account? You see what I'm saying?
right.
Maybe because he's known to come in and withdraw large amounts of cash in that way. Maybe the alert was letting people know, hey, just so you know, this is what he does, so everything is cool. Was it that kind of alert, I wonder, or was it something else? We don't know, right?
I don't know. I mean, we can only speculate that part of it. You know what I mean? And so then the question begs, like you were saying in some of the comments I read, and somebody else who had posted this video was saying that she was nervous and jumped the gun. Now, what if she was just doing her job? What was that? What if that was part of her protocol? She got the alert, she notified her manager, and then they ultimately ended up contacting the police.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
those would be my questions, because that's where uh, the disconnect happened
Right,
between him and the bank teller.
right,
Because the bank teller was, and the manager for that matter, chose to call the police and say that they felt that they were being robbed. A bank robbery
right,
was taking place. And that's what they told the police. The police did everything they were supposed to do. The police didn't do
right.
anything wrong. Just so folks know, the police handled that situation the way they were supposed to handle it. When you get a call like a bank robbery in progress, okay, unfortunately, that's a call that police officers are not going to go in and assume that no bank robbery is taking place. We're not going to go in there and initially assume that there must be a mistake. You see what I'm saying? No, we're going to go in there at face value of what we are being told, that a bank robbery is taking place. And they saw the guy who matched the description right there. So the first thing that I'm going to do as an officer in that situation is I'm a handcuff that person, make sure he ain't got nothing on him that's gonna hurt me. Because I'm going to assume that a bank robbery is being taken place just like it was reported as such.
No, there was no 911 call out on this. It just picked up with the officer's body cam, but that would be, I'd be curious to want to hear what the 911 call was for service. Also, too, I think, Mike, what a lot of people may have a heartburn with is because they saw the one officer pull his service weapon out real quick. Uh,
Mm.
I don't have a problem with that, because
No,
at the same
absolutely
time,
not.
keep in mind, hey mom, keep in mind why they were called there. This was a bank robbery in progress. right? I'm surprised that the guy didn't have his weapon drawn already coming in there.
Yeah.
You know, you going into a bank, and then the other officer, he was doing the talking. The other one is your cover, and he had his weapon out. So, I mean, he only had it out not even 2 seconds. He took it out and put it right back in once he asked him to put his hands behind his back. Now, the in my opinion, the best thing about this whole video is how he followed the acronym C.A.L.M to a T. Right? There was no reason to jump the gun. He knew he didn't do nothing wrong, so there's no reason to be combative inside the bank. So I commend the director on that. That's the way it always should go. But does it happen that way? No, it doesn't. So I think a lot of people, him pulling that gun out there like that, and would have a huge problem with it. But overall, I think the director himself handled himself in a professional manner. Like you said, Mike, I mean, you got to go into these things thinking of it as worst case scenario, and then breaking it down from there to say, okay, now we know who needs to be detained and who needs to be arrested. Right.
That's right.
Fortunately enough,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like Tone was saying, yeah, he was. That's right. He was detained. He wasn't arrested, not yet. Right.
Right.
And the guns, you know, folks need to understand. Pulling that gun, the gun is a tool. Okay, and there are certain calls to service that an officer, a reasonable officer, would have their firearm out. And a bank robbery is one of them. A bank robbery where the suspect is still on scene and in the bank at the teller counter. I'm going in. Yes, that is definitely reasonable to have your firearm out and ready. Okay. Yep. You can always put it back. Okay. But you can't, you may not have enough time to draw it, because if it really was a bank robbery, okay, and they had a gun on them or something like that, they're gonna get you before you get them if you ain't got your stuff out already. You see what I'm saying? Right. So that's not people need to squash that whole. I understand that it could be traumatic for somebody to have guns drawn on them, okay, by anybody, not just the police, but anybody. Right. I can understand that. But understand, these are the police. These aren't just some criminals pulling guns on you. These are the police who have that gun on you for a reason. Okay. And you're right, Corey. Mr. Cooler followed the C.A.L.M acronym to a T. He didn't get all, crazy upset. He didn't start arguing. He did everything that the officers asked him to do, directed him to do. He got handcuffed, reasonable. We're going to handcuff you and make sure you secure. Now that we got you secure and you are not a threat at this moment, let's talk about what happened while we're here. Let's confirm what this teller originally reported, right? And if the teller turns out that, we made a mistake, okay, that's unfortunate. But now I got to go brush this guy off and uncuff him, explain to him why I'm doing what I'm doing as the officer, and send him on his way. Okay. So Mr. Cooper shouldn't have any problem with how the police handled the situation. No, but I understand if he got a problem how the bank handled the situation.
Right. And that's where his argument needs to be with the bank and how they handle it. I mean, in any situation like that, like we've said in numerous videos, we're going to detain you until we can find out who's who, the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, and why. Once we are able to establish that, you'll be released, and the handcuffs will be taken off. Now, the next question then, Mike, is why did the other two people who were with him in the vehicle, why did they get detained, or like one article said, arrested? See, and I think that's another thing too, Mike. Maybe we need to just do a video on that, detention versus arrest. Versus arrest. because when you read these articles, a lot of times, everybody's throwing out arrest, arrest, arrest. No, that's not how it works. So they were detained. Now, again, what was the call for service? Bank robbery in progress. So if I know the vehicle, we have a description of the vehicle, and there's people in that vehicle, guess what? I expect another unit to roll up and detain everybody in that vehicle as well. Because again, we don't know who's who. There can be somebody in it driving to get away. We don't know. So it's
And
best
keep in
to
mind, when I'm detaining that vehicle that is reported as being associated with the bank robbery, I'm rolling up on that vehicle with my firearm out. My duty
that's
weapon
right.
will be drawn, and I'm going to be aimed at the vehicle because I don't know what's going on with this vehicle. Yeah, oftentimes, as we know, Corey, bank robberies, oftentimes they use a note, quote unquote, a note to rob a bank. Oftentimes they have a getaway car parked right outside in the parking lot waiting
Yep.
for them.
Yep.
Or somebody else in the car ready to roll with them. You see what I'm
Yep.
saying? That's very common for bank robbery. All right.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's why the people in the car were also detained because we don't know what's going on until we confirm otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. It's. I don't like one. I don't want to use the word standard procedures, but that's what's going to happen. Like I said, we have to make sure we have the right people. Because like I said, we don't know. What if somebody would have got out the car, they seen the police go in, and they know their boys and they robbing the bank, and they come in behind the police with AK-47s or whatever type of weapon and start attacking the police. So this is why your readiness alert is way up here, and then you got to try to bring it down, right? And I like how the one officer, I think he might have been a sergeant,
Good comment,
explained
Zach.
explained to them what went wrong, what happened, and why they were called. And this is going to happen. And they had no problem explaining to him once they got him in handcuffs. Hey, we're going to explain to you in a second. And they got him out, and they explained what happened, and ultimately ended up being released. But there was another comment that I read that some people have a heartburn with when I think it was the sergeant when he was explaining to him. He said, situations like these, you don't get the benefit of the doubt as far as being put in handcuffs or whatever the case may be, and you don't. I mean, that may sound rude, but no, you
Well,
don't get the benefit of the doubt.
like we always say, this a police, a call for service like this is not something that you play with. We don't worry. We're not worried about courtesy. We are worried about officer safety. That's the first thing we worried about. Okay, so folks need to understand that the call of a bank robbery in progress is, like you said, Corey, a heightened, super sensitive call. We are at a higher level of response than say somebody broke into my car. You see what I'm saying? We're
Right.
going in there assuming that we might get into a confrontation here, a very ugly confrontation here, or we don't know, but we're going to be ready for that. And that's a common response. There's nothing wrong that these officers did. There's nothing overboard that these officers did when they responded to a report of a bank robbery in progress. Okay. And for obvious reasons, we want to make sure, number one, we make the scene safe. Detain everybody that was reported as being involved or that we suspect as being involved. Figure it out. Once we got them detained, cuffed, and made safe, then we can get into, okay, now let's go over this again. What
Right.
happened here, right? Because keep
Right.
in mind, now for me, the first person I'm going to contact here on scene after I make everybody safe, after I detain the suspect involved, is I'm going to go straight to the reporting party and confirm what that reporting party told me on the phone, or told our dispatchers on the phone.
Dispatch, yeah.
And we gonna confirm this was a bank robbery and this is what happened. And once I confirm that, I'm not going to ask you. Say if I did confirm it was a bank robbery, I'm not going to just come out and start asking you the suspect questions, obviously, because at that point, the only thing I'm going to say is you are under arrest.
Right.
So I'm going to Mirandize
Right.
you before, read you your rights before I start asking you any questions like that anyway. Okay. That's in the situation where I've confirmed that, say it was a bank robbery. Now, if it wasn't a bank robbery, I'm going to still come out and then I'm going to ask you some questions and explain to you why I was there. I'm going to explain to that suspect why I did everything that I did. You know, some officers may not do that and they're going to get a bad response from the community if they don't do that, right? I think. But like that officer did, Corey, that sergeant did, he explained to Mr. Kugler everything that was going on and why they did what they did.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like you just said, Mike, I think if I was to arrive on scene first, I think they should have made contact with the reporting party first, which I don't think they did. At least the sergeant did. Now, I mean, again, we don't know how many.
Well, I think somebody might have been in there talking to the reporting party while
that's what I'm saying.
Was out there talking to people in the car.
Right. That's what I'm saying. We don't know how many units arrived on scene, so it's a lot of moving parts. But you're only seeing what you can see within that video. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident that there was another officer talking to who the caller was, the 911 caller was. Now let's get into the controversial part. See, I don't think he got a lot of play because the officer, the detaining officer, was black. The teller was black, and the
manager was black, if I'm not mistaken.
The manager was black too. So it didn't fit the narrative of, hey, police arresting them, a black man for going to the bank.
Well, like you said, I wonder if this would have gotten a whole lot more play if the teller was white, the officers were white, right? I think I have to say, I think it would have gotten a lot more play. I think you would have seen a whole lot more race cars being played on this and jumped out. Now, granted, so far it doesn't sound like Mr. Kugler is trying to push anything more with this, but I don't know if that's going to change later or not, right? But maybe dare I say, since everybody involved was black, maybe Mr. Kugler was convinced that it wasn't a racial issue because of that. I don't know. We would have to hear from Mr. Kugler on that, tell you the truth, why he chose not to pursue that. Or if it were somebody else besides Mr. Kugler, maybe they would have pursued it. I don't know.
Yeah, Zach, it would have changed the media's narrative for sure. It would have. I mean, you're right. I mean, I might even argue that fact with you. But what I would like to do, I would love the opportunity to sit down with him. I know, we're probably way out of his league for YouTubers. But I love to sit down and have that conversation with him and really actually tell him how well he conducted himself, during that situation. I mean, that was probably what we would call a textbook situation where it worked out to the T. They was compliant. We didn't have to raise our voice. We didn't have to go hands on. But we know that ain't always how it happens.
And I think I saw a video too where I'm assuming this was the bank manager talking to Mr. Kugler at the scene and was telling him how sorry she was. And she had mentioned something, as a black man in our bank, I really apologize for what happened here today. She started going on into how the teller was going through some quote unquote personal issues that had nothing to do with him. I saw that on YouTube, on the YouTube video on one of them I was looking at. And she really laid out an explanation of how she was sorry this happened, it shouldn't have happened, and so forth.
Right.
Now, so one could argue, was that the reason? Was her apology enough for Mr. Kugler to not push it anymore, or was the fact that they was all black that chose Mr. Kugler, that Mr. Kugler chose not to do anything more than that he was satisfied with the end result? I don't know.
Well, I don't know either, because like I said, the one article I read was that he wanted all the police officers' badge numbers, as if he was going to go after the police department for unlawful detention. And I mean, it's not going to go anywhere, because that wasn't an unlawful detention. And he would just be wasting his time and money. One of our viewers just sent the 911 call. I'm trying to get it pulled up here.
Cool.
So we can get it here. So bear with me 1 second, y'all. As I try to get it pulled up.
And I hear you, Zach. I think you're right. I think this just happened to be the roles are reversed. So if the roles are reversed and the officers were white and the teller was white, I think this would have been a different outcome. You would have heard a whole lot more stuff in the media by now about how this black man was wrongfully arrested, quote unquote arrested, for an accused of bank robbery. Can't help but think, yeah, you're probably right.
All right. Let's listen to this 911 call.
I see you, Tone. I see your question. We'll get in a minute. Go ahead.
Maybe I
feel comfortable. So he told me,
let me start it
over real quick. Okay.
Asked me a note, so I just told my manager I didn't feel comfortable. So he told me to call police while he was at stall. What is on the note? It just says I want to withdraw $12,000. Just be discreet.
Is this an actual customer, or are they trying to rob them?
They had a debit card and he inserted it. He gave me a California ID, but I was like, okay. I was like, how do you want the cash back? And he's like, just look at the note.
And he had no weapons, correct?
Not that I know of. He just has on black sunshades, a black hat.
Is he a black male, white male?
He's a black male. Every time I ask him like a question, he's like, look at the note.
So,
but he inserted his debit card, and then I asked for his ID. He handed me his ID as a California ID. But I didn't look at his name because I'm just like so shook up. Like, I don't know what he's trying to do. So I just told him, give me one moment. I have to get my manager.
Okay, so none of the information was even verified. Okay. He might just want to be discreet, but I have police around.
Yeah, I mean, he might. It just seemed weird.
Wow.
Yeah, even the dispatcher said, well, he might just want to be discreet for real, but we'll send the police anyway.
Right.
I think, someone might ask if the police dispatchers told the police that it's possible this was a customer being discreet, would that have made a difference in how the police officers responded? And I would say no. Again, we can't assume that you are not what they are reporting you to be. We got to confirm you are not reported what they are reporting you to be before we stand down or take any less action. Definitely. So that's interesting because she didn't check. Clearly, she didn't seem to check or verify any information that he was giving her. All she heard, all she saw was number one, note. She probably thought that was strange. Clearly, she thought that was strange for a note. And then when she asked him questions, he kept saying, read the note. Okay, that's
Right.
another red flag that, okay, that's weird, right?
Yes.
And
The
then all she was
The
on doing was
California
be
ID.
right. The California ID. She wasn't used to seeing a California ID, probably, right?
Right. Right.
Uh,
Or just an
and
out of state ID.
right, an out of state
Mhm.
ID. So that's another something else that could be kind of strange. And all
But
she
I don't
honed in on the note was, I need to withdraw $12,000. Be discreet.
and be discreet. Right. Now, are those red flags? I would say the note would probably make you want to start, okay, scratching your head or something other, because what do we know about bank robberies from back in the day? A lot of times it is that, they come in and they slide you
Yeah.
the note. Right. So that is a red flag within itself. But then, I mean, I don't think she just didn't do her due diligence to
There you go.
verify,
There you go.
who he was. You had his ID. You even said to the dispatcher he put his debit card in there. So
And
obviously,
he did. You did recognize it as a California ID. A bank robber ain't gonna give you some ID, right? We know that's probably unlikely. I never heard of a bank robber giving you a note along with his identification, right?
yeah,
So that might be a little weird. But like you said it best, Corey. She didn't do her due diligence to verify what was going on in front of her. She got panicked when she saw certain things, and she jumped the gun and thought it was something that it wasn't.
yeah.
You
I
know?
think, and I get why he wrote down a note. I'm not gonna go on a bank and then they ask you, oh, hey, Mr. Taylor, why are you here today? Yeah, I want to go ahead and withdraw $12,000 out of my savings account, and then everybody in the bank here's that, oh man, this dude finna get 12 G's out of his bank. Hey, let me go call Snooky and Bobo down the street, and we're gonna hit this dude up. You know what I mean?
Snooky and Bobo. All right.
Yeah, that's the only two names I can think of.
Tone says, was it a withdrawal slip or a note? It was
a note. It was a note.
Was it a note?
It was a
I
handwritten
thought
note.
it was a withdrawal slip with the note written on the back of the withdrawal.
Yeah, that's what it was. But the note itself was handwritten. Yeah,
Right.
That's where I got the quote from what he actually wrote down.
Oh yeah, real quick, Tone just asked a question a little bit ago. What is an unlawful detention? I guess it would be a detention where the officers stop someone for absolutely no reason. They have no suspicion. They have no reason at all to even detain someone. Not a consensual contact. Not to be confused with a consensual contact. As long as you feel free to leave, that is not considered a detention.
Right.
Okay, let's make that clear. As long as the person that I'm stopping still feels free to walk away from me, okay, that is not a detention. If I put cuffs on you, that's a detention, right? Or if I tell you you need to stay here and you're not free to leave yet, then that's a detention. But if I do that and I'm not, like, I'm just walking down the street and I randomly see someone and I just decide to go and stop that person and tell them that they can't leave, well, I guess that would be an unlawful detention. But most of those cases are argued if it's a call for service or something, and then a defense attorney wants to argue the stop in the first place, and they just refer to that as an unlawful detention for them to be able to argue whether it is or isn't. That's all that is, Tone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cut and dry. I ain't got nothing to say to that. Good job, Mike. But hey, thank you all for joining us this evening. If you just joined us, we're talking about the director of Black Panthers, who was detained back in January for possible bank robbery. And so we're just discussing that and what we think about it, and I think we've come to the conclusion that the officers did everything they were supposed to do within a reasonable manner, and two, Mr. Kugli did everything according to our acronym of CALM. And that's what it's all about, and everybody gets to go home. Now I know probably somebody's pride or maybe feeling a little bit of embarrassment because they were detained. In their eyes, they might think the other two people who were with him in the car, they may feel as though they were unlawfully detained, but they weren't.
No,
Uh,
they weren't.
due
They weren't.
due to the whole totality of that situation, they needed to be detained as well. That would not have been.
Excuse me. Now,
Uh-huh.
let me throw something in there real quick, folks, just real quick. Now, we talking about that CALM acronym and how Mr. Kugler followed that CALM acronym to a T, and that's great. That's what we want folks to do, okay? Because you don't know what kind of officers you are up against. You may not know the whole detail of why those officers are there in the first place, right?
Right.
Because Mr. Kugler clearly had no idea what was going on when he saw these officers and these officers giving him commands and then drawing down on him. He had no idea what was going on. But excuse me, what would have happened if I want our viewers to think about this. What would have happened if Mr. Kugler decided to fight and say, F you, man, I ain't putting my hands behind my back, and cause a struggle? Then the officers would have to be struggling with him, thinking that he might be possibly a bank robber. Okay. What if that's how he could have easily made something like this into a much worse situation
Oh yeah.
when he actually wasn't a bank robber, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's why it was very important for him to follow that CALM acronym that went like he did. And that's what we
Right.
want our viewers to do, is make sure you follow that and just do what you're supposed to do. As long as you don't give those officers any reason to escalate something that they're involved with, you'll be fine.
Right.
Okay. So I'm glad that he chose not to let his feelings get the best of him and decide to be argumentative or not follow what these officers are trying to tell him to do. You
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Right.
Just be patient, follow the orders, the commands of the officers, whether you understand why or not. At some point, they'll tell you and explain to you what's going on. At some point, when it's the scene is made safe, you are made safe in their eyes, and then they can ask questions and find out what's going on.
Yeah. Zach says, in my opinion, this was a bad situation of communication from beginning to end. Everyone involved made a bad decision. Are you saying the police
You
made a
mean
bad decision as well?
you mean yeah, you mean the teller and the man then deciding to call the police? I assume that's what he means.
Yeah.
Because the cops were just acting on what was being reported,
Right.
and
What was
they had
being
to,
reported?
yeah, and they
You
had to do
can't
what they
you
had to
can't
do.
go
Period.
into these situations lightly. I mean, yeah. I mean, even the dispatcher, she even sound like, okay, well, why are you calling? Why don't you verify the information? You know what I mean? But she was like, okay, well, I got units coming to you. Uh, you know, so you
Now,
can't, on the police side, like I said, you just can't go in taking these things lightly because we don't know, right? We have to respond to the call for service, and do their due diligence and find out, what's going on. Is there actual robbery in progress? And
I
so
mean,
they
you
have.
might make the argument though, Zach. Here's where I think Zach might be coming from. Uh, you might make the argument that the dispatcher, while having officers en route, could have pried more to say, hey, did you check identification? Could this person be an actual bank customer? Because as the dispatcher is getting that information and the officers are responding to the scene, if the dispatcher gets enough information for that teller to follow through and confirm whether or not a bank robbery was occurring, that information could have gotten out to the police officers possibly before they even arrived. And this would have been, no call, false alarm type deal. You know what I'm saying? What do you
Okay.
think?
I
If
I,
you
I
know,
hear
if I
you.
were to find fault or find a better decision, maybe I probably could maybe look at that aspect of it.
Yeah, but then you got to look at the level of the dispatchers. I mean, yeah, I mean, it depends on that dispatcher, how good that dispatcher is.
There you go. There
If
you
he
go.
or she is going to really dig into these things, because as they're taking in this information at the same time on a separate screen, they're sending it out to the units already. Um, one thing too that and we don't know, we're speculating here. The officers, a lot of times they put a contact number in the call for service. You know, I might have got that call for service number and called once I've seen the call for service and what it was, and it's like, man, this doesn't really sound like a robbery in progress, a burglary. So I may call them before I even get there
If you
and try
get that
if
opportunity, right?
if you get it right. If the number's in there, I'm gonna call the manager. Hey, this is all web, blah blah blah, and see what is. Okay, so hold on, he's got another response. I guess we're gonna have a good conversation. Corey, come on. If you can't tell that's a weird call, and maybe do a little more communication. That's not my job on that end. That's the dispatch job. The dispatcher on her level, she may know to probe in, she may not know, but she still has to get that call. When somebody calls in for call for service, the dispatcher doesn't have the right to say, "Oh, this is a BS call. We ain't sending nobody out there." They don't do that. They can't do that.
I hear you. Uh, but I still see a little bit more where Zach is coming from. Yeah, the responsibility falls on the. See, we getting into it now. The responsibility does fall on the dispatcher because obviously they're the first ones to get the call, right? They're the ones who should be asking all the right questions, right? Now normally where I come from, when a bank robbery comes out, it's an automatic thing that the officer will have the dispatcher call into the bank and clarify what's going on, right? They'll do that, but in this case, it was the teller who called the police directly, so she had a direct contact. But if that teller continues to insist that she believes a robbery is taking place here, no matter what you're saying, well, you gotta go and treat it as such until you find out otherwise. But if you got a good dispatcher, like you said, Corey, if you got a good dispatcher to ask the right questions, that dispatcher could have possibly headed that call off before the officers even got there. Maybe. You know what I'm saying? Like,
The question is, Mike, is that the dispatcher's job to head off calls? It's the officer's job to respond to that call for service, and it's that officer's responsibility to say, "Hi, yeah, there's nothing here." Now they can try to give the officers as much information as they can possible, so they know what they're getting into prior to arriving on scene. I get what Zach is saying, but all dispatchers aren't. Some aren't that experienced or have dealt with a call for service like that. Uh, but at the end of the day, if I'm going to put blame on somebody, it's going to be on that teller, because I feel that the teller
I
didn't
hear
do their due diligence, and just her tone. Well, you didn't sound like you were in distress, like you were afraid or worried or anything like that on the call. You it just seemed kind of weird because he had an out of state license and he wrote the dollar amount down on the back of the withdrawal slip. Like, okay.
No, I hear you. It is the dispatcher's responsibility, but it's also the officer's responsibility to ask the dispatcher's questions. If you get a call, we know this. We've gotten dispatched to a call, but the call, there's some holes in the call where, as the officer, I'm thinking, wait a minute, so this is happening or this is happening, and then I'm going to start asking questions to the dispatcher. So
Right.
they've confirmed that he is not customer in there. They confirm that he doesn't have an account in there. That might prompt me to ask the dispatcher questions as the officer when I'm responding, right? That way I can maybe get the dispatcher to ask a question that I might have while I'm en route. Now we speculating here because if I get on scene before any of that takes place, right, then I'm going to handle it exactly the way these officers handle it, right? Because I would not have had the advantage of asking extra questions prior to getting on scene. But if I do have that advantage, I definitely can see the officers asking more questions just to confirm in their own minds. So this is that they've definitely confirmed that this man is trying to rob. They haven't fact checked anything. They haven't checked his ID. Have they matched anything up to make sure that this is what's going on? Because I know if I go in there with guns drawn and this is not a bank robbery, I don't want to have to explain to this guy why I'm pulling my gun on him. You see what I'm saying? Ultimately, it wouldn't be my responsibility as an officer. I got to handle it the way I'm supposed to handle it so that I'm not getting shot when I walk in there.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But I can see where Zach is coming from. If I'm going to force myself to try to find some kind of fault or error on the law enforcement side, whether it's the dispatchers or the officers, I think that might be only place I could look is maybe the dispatchers didn't ask enough questions to make this reporting party confirm that a bank robbery was taking place.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I would go along with that. Again, I still feel as though it's going to be the ultimate. It's going to end with the officer, and then make
yeah. I agree with that. It's going to end with the officer.
But also too, because I know a lot of times when I would get a call for service, and you know when you read the call for service, it's kind of like, man, what is going on here? So I would get on and I would call in the dispatch and say, hey, what is this? Like, are you serious about this right now? And like, well, they said this, and then you know, sometimes you the officer, you get to do a little probe. So could the officers have done that? Maybe so. I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and Monday morning quarterback what went wrong, you know, or what could have happened on the way to the call for service, and you know, and try to make some type of, I don't know, false pretense story about, you know, what could have happened and should have happened. But I know in this type of situation, maybe enough information wasn't asked on the officers or on the dispatch side, because our dispatchers aren't sworn officers. What for state, and so you know they may not have that thought process because they didn't have maybe the experience. Now, again, like you said earlier, Mike, if you're well experienced dispatcher, you're gonna be thinking like out there. I mean, we have great dispatchers in our office that you would think that they were actually troopers, because the experience comes when you know you won't have to call back because you know who that dispatcher is on your channel. You know, hey, you get a call now. There's some that will call in Dev, Guru, SEAL Team 3 and 4, 5, and 6, and then you get like, whoa, it's not that serious. I don't need all that before you know you even ride on scene. You got, you know, the whole state force, you know, National Guard there and everything. There are dispatchers like that, but when you're in the fight for your life, you want that dispatcher on that radio. So that's when I had gotten to the fight on the side of the road, we had one of our best dispatchers on the radio, and I didn't have to really. I mean, he knew what I was thinking. He was already making a call because he knew I was out there fighting. So, but Tone says, do you let your dispatchers do ride-alongs too? Not in our office. I don't know about other precincts, but
yeah, we do. Our dispatchers are required to do ride-alongs with officers every so often. So our dispatchers, I have to say, most of our dispatchers were always on point. They knew, even when I started dispatch as an officer. most of the dispatchers that were there at that time were veterans already. So they were well versed in handling and taking calls for service. And yet they're required to do ride-alongs with officers so that they know, they can see that side of it. And you better believe I wouldn't be surprised if this police department's dispatchers, if they talk to them, and I wouldn't be surprised if they sitting in front of a video, watching this video too, and trying to encourage them to, you need to ask more questions, or trying to figure out what they could have done better. I bet you they're doing that, because that's what we would have done in our department, is what could we have done better? We would look at the video and say, is there something we could have done better? And trying to ask all the questions is a very common training topic for police dispatchers, because they're the first ones to get that call, and they're the first ones that's going to give any details that they hear to the officers. So it's very important that they know what questions to ask, when to ask them, and what kind of questions to ask. So that's a good point.
I'm definitely on board with this one here. Is that what you're saying? That's a good protocol, just like citizens should ride to get their driver's license. Absolutely. You would never get an argument out of me out of that. I think, but the reason why I know for a state, it was a liability type thing. State wasn't trying to be on the hook for that. So that's why we don't do it. I mean, we've talked about it before in our office, try to, get ride-alongs and things like that. But no, it's a liability issue, and some departments aren't willing to take that on. So, but we're going to wrap this up. Thank y'all for joining us tonight, man. Great discussion, Zach. We love you. We love your comments, man. And man, it was just a great conversation.
Thanks for joining us, Tone.
Tone, Frank, Stacy, Goat. Thank y'all so much for joining us tonight. And share this out and hit that like button for us too, y'all. Don't forget to do that and share it out. But we thank y'all for joining us. Go ahead.
And Mike, real quick, like Corey was saying when we started the show, this isn't a normal day that we do a show, but sometimes when an event comes out and it's real hot, we're gonna start trying to jump on that real quick so we can talk about it. But sometimes we'll just wait to see if more information comes out, so we can have a more educated response or view on it. Because a lot of times information don't come out right away. It might take some time. But thanks for joining. I know it was unexpected for us to do this show today on Saturday, because we normally don't do it on Saturdays. As you guys know, it's mostly on Thursdays. But all our shows are recorded anyway, so you can watch them at any time you want.
Zach, thanks for making that sacrifice. I know you're a UFC buff, so but thanks for watching with us tonight, man. We appreciate it. We love y'all. Stacy, thank you. Goat, you know it. Frank, we love y'all. Mom, thanks. So share this out, and we'll be back, like Mike said, next Thursday.
Frank, I try to keep my hair up.
I cut mine this morning, man. Am I shining like you, Frank? I like to have my shine. But we'll see y'all next week. Enjoy the rest of y'all's weekend, and y'all be blessed. Peace.
All right. Peace.